Welcome back to the show. It's my honor to have Justin King on the show today, and this is going to be a barn burner. Justin's a retired special agent in charge of the DEA and the Chief Product and Strategy Officer for the National Command and Staff College. He's also the Chief Strategy Officer for Magnus Works. His resume is extensive. I can't cover everything. He has an extensive training record that included a lot of things, including directed training programs in the United States, Afghanistan, Guatemala, Honduras, Paraguay, Ukraine, and other locations. Well, man, we probably don't have enough time to get to everything that you've done up until now, but give us a brief summary on just your career and kind of leading up to what you're doing today. And we'll get into the deep part of the leadership part of what you're doing today, because if you're listening early on, you've got to stay tuned to this, because what Justin and his group's involved in is a game changer for law enforcement. And we want to dive into that. But before that, Justin, tell us how you got into law enforcement and how that went.
I was in the Army, captain, been in for a few years. I was prior service, so I was enlisted. I knew what I was into. And I just started thinking there was more I wanted to do with my life. And I had went to a school at Fort Benning, Georgia, right before I transferred out to Fort Carson, Colorado. And a guy was telling me his brother had joined the FBI, and he said, my brother said that he kind of wished he would have joined DEA. So I started doing some research, and one thing led to another. I applied, and everything they told me could happen happened. I went right to the border, right to Laredo, Texas, and cut my teeth there. And then I got an opportunity to go to the Foreign Deployed Advisory Support Team, where we were working counter narcotics, counterterrorism operations in Afghanistan. Trained with the military to do that, and then was fortunate enough to be embedded with multiple special operations units in tours over there. Rotated back to Oklahoma City, my home state. Got to do 5 years there, ultimately promoted, ran a HIDTA task force, and went back to the FAST program as a team leader, and went and actually did the last deployment to Afghanistan in 2015 that we did as a team, our unit. And after that, when the things started to wind down in Afghanistan, they disbanded the unit. I went over to officer training for about a year. And then I was fortunate enough to rotate out to Little Rock, Arkansas, where I was the assistant special agent in charge of the state of Arkansas. And I finished up my career in Omaha, Nebraska as the special agent in charge there, where I was blessed to have just phenomenal people throughout my career. Omaha was kind of like the icing on the cake. I did, 3 years up there, and 5 states, the Dakotas, Nebraska, Iowa, and Minnesota. So just a really wonderful time. I've had a blessed career, and it really, I will say that I can't believe I get to do what I do and still be part of law enforcement right now.
Yeah, Justin, you kind of described my childhood dream, right? Like most dreams, they don't always end up that way. Once I wasn't going to be a professional baseball player, it was DEA all the way. And here's why. My father was a narcotics officer for, 24, 25 years. So I grew up in the 80s. And as you know, the 80s in narcotics work was Miami Vice for real. And so I was around a lot of his narcotic friends, DEA agents, because he worked on task forces. I even knew one of the fallen DEA agents, actually ATF agents in Waco. And so my father had pushed federal on me because I think he saw, that's kind of he was my dad. So I think he's looking at, okay, federal is more opportunities, this and that. And so I had in my head just what you said, Justin. Like I knew enough information that if I went to the DEA and went overseas, they gave you more money, right? And I'm like, oh, I get a 25% bump in salary to go to Guatemala. That's awesome. Well, that's awesome when you're 18 years old, when you're married with kids, doesn't seem so appealing. So kudos to you. I'll ask you before we move on. So how did you navigate all those moves and all that travel? I mean, obviously family and all that. So talk to us about that portion of it and how you were able to navigate that successfully.
Well, I couldn't have done it unless I would have married just the most wonderful woman in the world. And when I was a young lieutenant at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, I met my wife, and she's just as strong, and she always kept the home fires burning. They always say behind a good man is a good woman. No, she was right there, right beside me the whole time, and she took care of things. But it did put a lot of stress and a lot of strain on our family. I have four daughters, and and now I'm a grandfather. I have a lot going on, but you get you have to have that balance. And I remember coming home times whenever, she still had stuff scheduled and she goes, yeah, you just got home from a deployment, but we've got a birthday party to go to or something,
Yeah, yeah.
and help me balance. But, you know, it's just like anything else. You can get very, very addicted to the going and running and gunning and the fun stuff you're doing. And I would say probably not as well balanced as I should have been back then. And that's one of the things that makes me so passionate about what we're doing now.
Yeah, what you're doing now, we're going to get into the balance part and the wellness part of that. But, I want everyone to recognize this listening. Like you and I get on and we talk about this stuff. We get on stage, we talk about this stuff. None of this could happen. None of my dreams would have come true without my family, without my wife, right? And I would assume you're the same way. Like we get to talk about this cool stuff we did, things that people have to go to the movies to watch, and we got to do it in real life. But none of that exists without your support structure. And I wish I would have recognized that like you earlier, right? I mean, over the last decade or so, I come to a real clear analysis that, man, this is only happening not because of me, but because of the people that support me. But that's so important. And so you're involved in the leadership space at a very high level now. And I want to get into those details because I think the National Command and Staff College is the best unknown secret we know of. Like everyone knows are the big names. I've been to all the big names. I got involved in leadership not because I wanted to. I was drug into it because I went to all these big, well-known schools and academies, and heck, I got a doctorate in it. And I looked around, and I went, "This didn't do anything for me." Like if you don't practice it, if you don't use it, if you don't care about people, you don't take care of the wellness of people. If you don't care about others more than you care about yourself, all this education is nothing more than a certificate on the wall. And we have far too many in law enforcement that they check the box, they put it on the resume, and they think they're good. And so you are still contributing at such a high level. So what triggered you to let you go, you know what? I know I'm retired, but I've got to get involved in leadership and law enforcement. Is there any experience in your background that sort of triggered that?
Yes. One thing the military does really well is training, and they always are leading that training up to before you go to the next job, you're getting trained, you're doing those things. When I rotated out of DEA or out of the Army and went to DEA, I stayed in the National Guard, and I spent 2 years as the officer candidate school lead instructor for the state of Texas for their National Guard program. And I learned a lot in, I sat through a lot of classes as a lieutenant and a captain, Fort Benning and doing things. But I really started to become passionate about how do you make training more enjoyable? How do you get the attention of the audience? How do you find a way? And you would have these officer candidate school, these students who are in there for a year in classrooms, and you're trying to find ways to get them good movie clips, or you have a good story and things. But I also tried to instill in them that, this is real. The day will come when you're standing in front of somebody and you're in charge, and you have to have that, those things in your kit bag. So what we have to do is find practical and training that we can deliver to people, but also to make them realize that it's something they can put there and fall back on. They can gain from those experiences and they can grow, because we want people to be stronger. And, you're not going to have all the answers, but what do you have in your kit bag? So when I was in DEA, law enforcement, we had challenges. We're always promoting people, and then we get in there and, hopefully they have a good mentor, they have a good leader, they have somebody that they learn from. And one of the things that, really happened, and I can walk through this a little bit, is Dr. Javidi, our chancellor. So Dr. Mitch, as a lot of people know him, I was introduced to him when I was about 7 years ago. I was enrolled in our command and staff leadership program, which is a blended 240 hours online followed by 2 weeks of residency. And that program was built just for what you said, Travis. It was built for people who couldn't get into, some of the bigger programs. They couldn't afford it, but it allowed that leadership development. And so me and another assistant special agent in charge, ASAC, we went through it. And what I found was it started to change the trajectory of the way I was thinking about doing my job. And I started really, how do I build teams? How do I invest in the growth of people? And how do I make my organization better by making them stronger and developing them? Because it's easy to say, I want to go to SWAT. I want to go to the FAST program. I want to be in narcotics. I want to do this and do it individually. It's a whole different thing when you have to start influencing people and you start building those teams and you become a supervisor and a manager. So I would say the last 6 years or so of my career, what that did was it allowed me to really focus on building and growing the people who work around me and say, how do I try to train them to be me someday? How do I get them to take my position? And what I was focusing on at the time was, law enforcement has the most wonderful people. And I've always said, it's probably not the hardest job as a leader, as leading people. It's hard because of the whole big piece of it. But how do we develop that next generation? Because we're all going to time out. There's always is going to be. And I used to put up a pictures when I taught officer candidate school of all the famous generals, Washington, Eisenhower, MacArthur, and Patton, all these guys. And I'd put them up and I'd ask people, well, and they would all say, oh, they're a great general. They did this, they did this. And I said, what none of you said was they all left the Army and the Army keeps rolling. It's the motto, Army keeps rolling
Yep.
along. That's one of our Kate, and so when I met Dr. Mitch, our HIDA state representative, our director, he would bring Dr. Mitch in to speak and present our Magnus workshops. And we just kept in touch. And as I started to get closer to the end of my career, I didn't want to do anything else but try to find ways to get back into this space and help people be not just better leaders, but help be healthier leaders, because we feel that you can't be a totally capable, strong, as best leader as you can be unless you're healthy. And you got to have that balance, and you've got to have that and what we call being Magnus, which is it's better than great. How do you become something better than great? And the only way you can do that is to focus on things that are out, not just your leadership, but you as a person. How do you become healthy?
Yeah, I didn't want to insult you by saying it's the best unknown secret, but the truth is, I was involved in leadership at a high level, uh, and I didn't know about it till after I retired, and I found it. And when I found it, I looked at it and I went, man, this is exactly what my whole goal was. Like, I've been doing, I've written books and classes, this and that, but the biggest issue, and you already identified it, Justin, is people can come to your class, they can get excited about it, and the next day they're back to work. Where's the follow up? Where's the accountability, right? And what you have pioneered here at the command college is you have that. So explain to people, maybe start with your larger school that you do, and then explain how you stay in touch with them and hold them accountable, because that is really has been the missing ingredient. The last time you talked about these big training things, the last time I was at the DEA headquarters. I was at the FBI National Academy. I think the statute of limitations run out, so I won't give too many details, I don't think, about what we did at the DEA headquarters. But there's a bunch of DEA guys were there, so I thought I was okay. But coming to find out, you guys are pretty mischievous. But you go to this big fancy 10-week leadership program, then you just come back to work and you're right back in the grind. No follow up, no nothing. It's more, you have friendships, you have relationships, but there's no one that is making sure this stuff's continuing. And so I see a big gap in law enforcement. Dr. Mix saw this years ago, years before me. And so when I saw what you guys are doing, I thought, man, I got to find out about this. And that's why I'm so glad you're here, because I'm not going to reproduce the wheel. I'm not going to duplicate anything. I'm going to send people your way, and I've sent plenty of people your way. You do classes all over the country, 1 day, 2 day, but let's talk about your big one, the one you talked about you went to, and then how you continue that training long after with the students.
Yeah, and so I think it's important. Our command and staff leadership program, we see that leaders at the first level, mid level, all the way up through executive, they need to have an environment where they can actually reflect and talk about what they are, how their personality is, and how they are as a leader. And what the course does is it allows the command and staff leadership course, it allows self-paced 240 hours online where you're interactive with instructors and you do quite a bit of writing, but that's necessary because it breaks you down. Just like you said, you're going to, you have to reflect on some strong leaders you had or some people that weren't and how you do it. But then it starts to get into how do you deal with conflict? How do you create plans? How do you build your team? And it talks about how an organization, how you can think your organization is the greatest thing since sliced bread, but you just become complacent because you're used to being half what you could be, just because people say, oh, it just becomes normal. You have to get out of your comfort zone. So taking that and then bringing people together for 2 weeks from different agencies, different ideas, where they actually work together and they do a capstone exercise. That program gives 6 hours of graduate level credit. But what's beyond that? And we have learning management systems that are built, that we give a emerging leaders course that is built to stack in there in those in that, and then beyond. And then what we do on the backside is we do our Magnus leadership workshops, 2-day workshops. We teach every officer as a leader, so we can come in, we can help with the culture of the agency. We want to be able to bring that into the agency. We want to give those leaders and those executives in those agencies every opportunity. And ultimately, we would love for somebody to be a legacy where they start with us, all their people going through emerging leaders. They go through command and staff leadership with their upper, and then they take the culture class. They do every officer's a leader. They take West Point leadership online. We have that online. And then we will actually, at the end of it all, if somebody wants to, we'll actually let them put on, we have, Magnus Works App, which somebody can come in and they can carry that with them every day. And we always say, how do we put Dr. Mitch in a box? So we do it with Magnus Works. We have that. And his book that he and Brian Ellis, Brian, they wrote the 11 rings of, his theory of Magnus Ovea. And so those 11 rings, you have that. And so every day you're able to take that with you. But we believe that leadership development is never ending. And we think that, how do we stay in touch and we listen? But the other thing, and one of the reasons I really am so fortunate, is we listen to the industry. If the industry comes to us and says, hey, I'm thinking about this or that, if a police department, a sheriff's office, then we'll build something. If it's one-off, we'll find a way to do that, because different people have different challenges and they're all looking for something.
Well, if you tell me the biggest issue in law enforcement, what's the biggest problem? How do you overcome it? You've solved it. And here's what it is. The higher you go up in the rank, I've experienced this, the more isolated you are, the better you think you are than you really are, the more people are patting you on the back, telling you how great you are, right? And so you end up, if you're not careful, you're a major or a police chief or assistant chief, and man, all you hear is great things, and nobody wants to tell you the negative. I couch this in politics. There's a couple of great stories. Hillary Clinton was told in 2015 that her head of polling said, hey, people in the West don't like you. Now, she didn't have to pay for polling to find that out, but she was told that. She fired the guy the very next day. You think anybody ever told her the truth again? And by the way, you Trumpsters out there, same thing. He was very notorious for, if you told him something he didn't like, he would come down on you. And so if we're not careful in leadership, especially at the high level, you surround yourself with the people that you only want to hear from them, right? So as a commander, I used to take people out to lunch, that would just be honest with me, away from everybody, and tell me, did this work? Did this not work? Because if I just listen to the masses, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's very easy to fall into that comfortable trap, Justin. And what you have done here is, especially with Magnus Works, is listen, I'll break off and I'll tell you this. I just talked to a new chief a few weeks ago. They'll call me and they'll say, hey, give me some advice. What would you do? I'm flattered they'll call me, but I'm not actually the expert at that. But I'd say, easy, man, easy. Call command college up, get everybody trained. Here's why you train everybody, Justin. I do not believe in training just the rank, because everyone's a leader. You already said that. But if you train, in fact, in my leadership classes, I sometimes have to force them to put line personnel in the class. Oh, we're going to put the lieutenants and up in. No, you're not, or I'm not coming. Everyone needs to go so everyone knows how to hold everybody accountable, because if just the rank goes, the lower rank doesn't know whether they're doing it right or they're doing it wrong. And so I'd put everybody through your training. I'd get everybody Magnus Works App, because the Magnus Works App, they can give leadership feedback about their agency anonymously. And as a leader, I'm going to know the truth of what's actually going on. Not many leaders have the courage to do that, because we want to be told great things. But if you truly want to lead great, you truly want to leave a legacy, you better break out of that comfortable mode. And you have given a tool, Justin, for every agency to do that. I'm going to make no bones about it. I do leadership. I write books. I talk about it. What you're doing is the best thing out there today. No one's come close. I had a pipe dream to do something similar. I'm now all on board because that's a powerful tool. I can only imagine at my agency, if we had that 20 years ago, the agency would not resemble what it looks like today. When you talk about greatness, you listen, Dr. Mitch is I mean, to me, it's an icon of what in his brain he came up with, right? He's body cameras 30 years ago. How people think Mitch is crazy, right? But trust me, the future is what you're doing, Justin. You're in the forefront of that. Talk to us about the app. You go to the training, you go to the stuff, everybody is on the same page. What power does the app give those officers that's been through that training at that point?
Well, it's powerful even if they haven't been through the training, because it is something that allows someone to self improve, self reflect. It gives you a way to communicate within your agency. I mean, just think about that, Travis. If you went back and you were talking about that, just the communication piece of it, for a commander to be able to put out a video, or a training coordinator to put out a training, just the ability for it to interface with a learning management system. And we have that learning on the app. You can actually go in, push a button, takes you right to that. You can integrate your own training into that app. And so what Magnus Works does is it's going to help you with the wellness side of people, which is showing that you're invested in your people. You're going to allow that anonymous feedback, so you're getting that pulse, that barometer of your agency. But the use and the imagination is only, your ability to use it is only limited by what you can imagine you can do. We see people that are integrating it into their training, basic training right away. They're getting their people on board. We say this is important for your administrative staff just as much as it is for your officers, because everybody in your organization is just as important. And like you said, that communication with everybody is so important. The other thing that really is something that I think you hit on is the future. If you went back and just took the body worn cameras that we talked about, policing has moved at light speeds in this country. I know we have the best policing in the world. If you really think about how it's grown and how technology has been integrated, it's funny that everybody in America right now has a phone with an app on, some kind of an app. If you go travel, you're going to be
Right.
on there. If you're going to be, going to rent a car, you got that. You got your hotel. But what the other thing that's ironic is most law enforcement leaders, and they're busy. I know they are. It's the hardest job in the world right now. But they're just using it like Waze or their Google Maps. They're hitting destination and go. You can't do that. You have to chart a course. You have to say, where do I want my agency to be? And how do I prepare them? Because take a leader in today's America policing, what they're dealing with, and they've got all this in their kit bag. Most of these guys could retire, gals, they're at a point. Take them and say, what would you want to have trained 5 years ago to handle what you're handling right now? How would you want to prepare your organization 5 years ago for now? That's how the mentality has to be. So by integrating and doing this, and I was asked this question years ago when I stood up. I was part of the team that stood up the at special response teams for DEA. And an administrator asked me after we did a couple of trainings, said, well, what did you learn from training? I said, sir, training will always reveal you need more training. It always will. Now, the question is, are you going to invest in it? Are you going to make that investment? We invest in weapons. We invest in cars, radios. We spend money on ammo. What are we investing in? And you have to identify and train leaders as soon as possible. We continue to promote people younger, less experienced. What are we doing to identify them? And I always will use this analogy. If you look at the Yankees, you and I are baseball guys, we love baseball. If you take three of the greatest Yankees that are Hall of Famers, Mariano Rivera, Derek Jeter, Mickey Mantle, all got sent back down to the minor leagues at one point before they became superstars. There are no minor leagues. You can't send somebody back down once you put them in that leadership position.
Yeah, and even in this most simplistic terms that we don't have access to, it's a suggestion box on steroids, right? You empower every single employee with a tool, but they don't have to fear about repercussions. They get to tell, exactly where they think the department can go or how they can help or anything like that. And from a leader standpoint, it was always difficult to get those 360 evaluations right. Most times you don't do them, but I wanted to know honesty. I want to know what if I'm doing, if it's helping you or hurting you. So many people, especially in law enforcement, are fear of reprisal and they're hesitant, right? The old joke is if you get a call tomorrow to come see the chief, everyone thinks they're in trouble. That's a clue of the environment and the culture of your agency if they think that. They should be thinking, oh, he wants me to help with something, or he's got some questions about something. But no cop listening to this will tell you that. So that is a very sick outlook on our culture. This is a way to break the mold because they're going to see a leader that is open to letting everybody participate.
Yes, and it does. It allows that value added benefit. And so, if you were to take a SWAT team and say, or a special operations team, what do? They allow individuals to be highly trained, but they also expect them to be able to perform their duties. And then if something doesn't go right, or they come back and they critique it, right? And you do an after action, you say, hey, how can we be better? What did we do? What was our thing? And what always comes up, almost always, planning, communication, perception. The perception. I saw something, maybe I thought I saw something. This guy's like, oh, I didn't hear that. Or maybe I'd heard that. And, it's that, how do we find ways to do that? And I think that one of the things I know that we do, and this is one of the things that's so powerful about our Magnus leadership workshops. Dr. Mitch comes in for 2 days. I'm fortunate to be one of the people that's getting trained up to help him teach that. And Mark Garcia, retired chief, teaches it as well. And so, that is so impactful. But what happens is people at the end of that, they're like, okay, I learned that I have to be stronger as a person. I have to be a better leader. And we go through the science of why you become the way you are, over time, how you become cynical, it's scientific. And
Right.
so, but what we're doing when we do that is when people leave there, it's like, hey, I want more of that. And, just having that right there in their hand, they've got that. So it's more of that, still focus on yourself, but focus on your agency as well.
So I'll be at the 2-day course in Arizona, September 17th and 18th, Justin. I want to invite all of our audience to meet us out there. You're going to be out there, and then tell our audience what they're going to get when they attend that course. It's just 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, September 17th and 18th. Easy in, easy out. Phoenix is an easy city to get to. There's simply no excuse to not come. What will they experience when they're there?
So, first off, glad you're coming. We're very excited to have you there. Don't be surprised if we don't have an impromptu Travis Yates session in there.
Well, I can't speak. What are you talking about?
Well, it's we really want to thank Sheriff Lamb and them for hosting. But what happens is Dr. Javiti's theory of Magnus Ovea is he builds on Colonel Boyd's OODA loop and Bandura's social learning theory, and he explains to you how your interaction, but how that elasticity, you have to have that. How do you come back? But what we really want to do is we want to help people to understand that, how do we build that resilience, be left of bang? We want people to be stronger so when that thing happens, they can come back. And what we do is through sharing stories, showing that science, describing, what it is, people start to realize, and we give 3 personality assessments during that, so people learn what they learn about themselves, helps them be stronger leaders. It's not just that they're in a leadership position. If you're in law enforcement, you are a leader. If you're administrative in your agency, you are a leader. And so we want to bring people together, and we want to give them those cognitive, emotional tools that'll help them be performers. We want people to be stronger. I promise. No, everybody that goes through it says the same thing. This is unlike anything I've ever seen or done. And anybody that's ever been around Dr. Mitch knows he's infectious. His energy, his enthusiasm, and it really shows that we care. And we have the one in Pinal. We also have one scheduled in Colorado in November 12th and 13th. We have one in Fauquier County, September 30th and October 1st. Every one of these has some seats available still. Go to National Command and Staff College.com and register. It's easy. And we're scheduling them out for next year. We've already got 12 plus on the books for next year. So we're doing that as well.
Yeah, people listening, get a hold of these guys, inquire. If you don't have any money, it's okay. Get a hold of them anyway. They'll tell you a way around it. They'll figure it out. They give them a whole city, but it's filling up quick. And it's really incredible stuff. I love the idea of left of bang leadership. I've written some content on that. I actually have a partial book started on that. So you just mentioned that term, because in law enforcement, we're so quick to wait for a crisis, then respond. Everyone listening to this in law enforcement has had training after an event. They've had a briefing after an event. They've had to do things after something bad happened. Well, there's nothing new under the sun, Justin. We know what bad could happen, right, in our profession. Let's prepare now. Let's deal now. And that way you don't have to be reacting to it. And the programs you're offering will get you there. Man, I can't thank you enough for being here. Give them the website again, Justin.
Yes, it's the National Command and Staff College. Is National Command and Staff College, but it's commandcollege.org. If you go
Folks,
to commandcollege.org.
I want to be very specific here. Okay. This is what you need from an organization standpoint. Hey, come to my classes, have a good time. I want to entertain you. You're going to be fired up. But if you truly want to change the entire organization, up and down, A to Z, the culture, you have to embrace this. I say this from experience. I've been to everything. You name the acronym, I've been to it. I've got a doctorate in it. I've got it all in it. Nothing comes close to what these guys do. At least reach out, enter into a dialogue, and find out what they can do for you. Justin King, thank you so much for your work. It's legacy building. It's legacy lasting. You and the group over there, it's incredible stuff. I'm honored to just get to talk to you. Thank you so much. And if you have been listening or if you have been watching, just remember this: lead on and stay courageous.